Good afternoon, friends. It is Friday afternoon. It's going to be 3. And we from the Scientific Society of Aarupadai Veedu Medical College, a constituent college of Vinayaka Mission Research Foundation, are back with another episode of the Forefront of Future Frontiers webinar series. We are now, just a reminder to you, we are now in series 6, where we are exploring the theme of concepts in medical education. And this is episode number 28. Without further ado, today's talk is going to be on teaching and assessing the residents' clinical skills. And we have none other than Doyen of Medical Education, Professor Ananthakrishnan, to share this talk with us. Without much ado, I would request our Dean to welcome the speaker. Over to you, Dr. Couture.
Very good afternoon to one and all over here. I'm indeed privileged as the head of the institution to welcome Professor Ananthakrishnan. We have popularly known as Professor AK, to this FFF platform, as told in the 28th episode. And just to share the information, one more stalwart will be sharing the platform today. On this platform, we'll be very happy to inform that many stalwarts, Dr. Vivek Prakash Mishra, Dr. Balram, Dr. Katoch, all eminent people, Dr. Mohan, eminent people from across the globe have shared. Now I am indeed very happy on behalf of our management, on behalf of our Honorable Chancellor and Madam Chancellor. I am very happy to welcome Professor AK to this, and also the esteemed participants. And we have earned some credibility for this FFF platform, wherein the participants are from all across the country, from various medical colleges. This is what we have earned the credibility of this FFF webinar platform in AVMC. Even though Professor AK expressed a couple of minutes back, not to introduce or tell something about him, and I only told him that he doesn't have control on what I say, so which I must say. Also, I claim that I know Professor AK for the past almost 3-4 years, ever since I was there in Satya Sai. And of course, he is known across the country in the medical education, as described by Professor Mahalakshmi, Doyen of Medical Education. That was a wonderful thing. In fact, I must tell, he was one of the reasons for me to come all the way, travel from Karnataka to this place. I heard who are all there, Professor Seturaman, Professor Ananthakrishnan. Then I thought, being amongst wise people will make also you a little bit wise, at least. With that philosophy, I traveled to Tamil Nadu. Now, one or two thoughts I must share also on today's topic. It is quite appropriate. I just like to justify by saying that, we all know medical education is undergoing great, much awaited, much needed reform ever since our independence, and both at the undergraduate level, both at the postgraduate level, regulating council has rolled out the competency-based curriculum plan, and we are amidst that. And along with that, change in the curriculum, the assessment, of course, also has changed. Now we all talk about competencies, competency-based education, competencies, performance, etc. One thing I like to share at this point of time, for the information of our participants, certainly not for Professor AK sir and Dr. Bhatt. This is not a new concept. It is an age-old, thousands of years ago, this Gurukula system, wherein the student we used to observe the teacher and we used to learn the competencies from him. And the teacher in turn used to observe the student, whether he's doing the right things or not. He used to correct it then and there itself. So that is the historical perspective of that. Of course, with the modernization and modern concepts in things, and it is being practiced or imparted in a very practical, very acceptable way to cater to the present needs of that. And one more thought is, I already said that the assessment also has to be changed according. Of course, curriculum cannot exist without assessment, or the other way around. And assessment also, we used to talk of only psychometric qualities of an instrument, how well it measures and all. Now even assessment also has beyond the qualities of that tool to include issues like accessibility, visibility, or equivalence, whether it is valid across the various medical colleges, or catalytic effect, or what educational effect. So these things are also being considered in the assessment. I'm sure on this right occasion, we have got a right person to, and I forgot to mention, he has a unique distinction of rolling out the competitive curriculum, probably for the first time in India and Asia, with the Balaji Vidyapith, even before the Medical Council of India venture to get into that. We had that unique distinction. Here is a right man for us to, I'm certainly sure that all of us will be benefited by his thoughts and experience. Thank you to you, Professor Dr. Bhatt, Vishnu Bhatt.
Good afternoon, sir. It is my duty to welcome Professor Ananthakrishnan on behalf of our medical college and the university, and on behalf of all of you who have gathered here. He may not require any introduction because almost all of you know, juniors and seniors. He was my senior colleague in Jipmer. He joined as assistant professor when I joined my post-graduation in pediatrics. He is the Dean of Faculty of Medicine, Balaji Vidyapith now, and also Professor of Eminence in Surgery and Health Professional Education. He was in Jipmer and he was heading the department for a long time, and his special interest was gastroenterology. And I don't think any conference or meeting would have taken place in India without his presence as a speaker or a chairperson in surgery and gastroenterology. And he has given several orations, more than 15 orations, and silver medal, gold medal. Since he wanted me to be very brief, I will not tell which are the medals, but several medals and honors he received. And he has done original research work and original surgical work or surgical techniques in gastroenterology and general surgery. And his original work on biliary lithogenesis, Helicobacter pylori, carcinoma of penis, and viral etiology of peptic ulcers of pituitary tract, lymphatic pylori, to name a few. And several procedures, he has started his own method of doing surgery, and it's a long list of that. And he has got more than 450 publications and 7 copyrights, and he is well known in medical education. I was also there with him as a junior faculty in National Teachers Training Center in Jipmer. He was there for a long time. Later, he joined Mahatma Gandhi. He was also director of Indira Gandhi Medical College of the Puducherry government for almost 3 years. And the Medical Council of India nominated him for postgraduate training program to start that. I think for 2-3 years he was in charge of the postgraduate medical education. And what you are seeing today, the rural posting for internship, all that is brain work. He was the star person for those things. And since he wanted me to tell only one line, I am told only 4-5 lines. And I am happy to present to Dr. Ananthakrishnan to all of you. And I think Dr. Mahatma will continue now.
Yeah. Thank you very much, sir, for that nice introduction. Before we move on and hand over the stage to Dr. Ananthakrishnan, a request to all the participants, please keep your mics muted so that the audio quality is good for everybody. And also, we would like to go on record and say that this program is being recorded for academic purposes. Right? Over to you, Dr. AK.
Thank you, Maha. Thank you, Professor Kotur and Professor Vishnu Bhatt and all the others at AVMC for inviting me for this webinar to speak on a subject which is close to my heart. And I hope at the end of this presentation, I can convey that in spite of what we consider as regulatory restrictions, a lot is possible in our country to further the cause of postgraduate education. I am using the term competencies rather than skills because it is competencies we have to focus, and manipulative skills are only part of the training of postgraduates. and these have to go together in order for them to become meaningful. My plan is to start with the current teaching and current assessment methods very briefly. And you all know the lacunae, highlight some of the lacunae, then present what the residents feel is need in their training program, their own perception. Since we are stuck with the current teaching learning method, what we can do to improve the current methods to ensure a satisfactory outcome. And you know, all know, those who are interested in medical education, that a lot of changes have taken place in the field of assessment of residents abroad, which we are still to implement entirely, although we are implementing in bits and pieces, which Maha is largely responsible for when she was vice principal of curriculum in our institute. You know, Ron Harden described OSCE and OSPE as evaluation methods, but then it was very soon realized that OSCE and OSPE are not only evaluation methods, they can be excellent teaching learning methods, and they can be integrated with assessment. Likewise, the workplace-based assessment methods can be integrated and teaching incorporated in them, and that is the theory that I'm trying to go and push in the next half an hour or so. I don't have to dwell in detail in this slide because those who are in postgraduate residency teaching know these things. These are what we constitute as the current teaching learning methods which most colleges adopt for residents. All of them are not there in every place, but there is an opportunity to do those things at least. But what is the main problem? The main problem is there is no protected or scheduled timetable for the postgraduates. There is for undergraduates in the recent competency-based MBBS curriculum. There is no such time for postgraduates in the clinical simulation or cadaver labs. Therefore, implementation is left largely to institutes. The goals are not clear, the outcomes are not defined, and I think the regulator thinks the university will do it, and the universities think that the regulator will do it, and ultimately we don't have a list of defined outcomes. Therefore, it becomes subjective. Our methods are largely didactic or very traditional, like case discussions, journal clubs, postgraduate seminars, and so on. Very little learning from critical incidents and very few workshops which are focused on specific outcomes. Those in red are what I consider very important from the point of view of teaching and learning. There is lack of individualization, all residents being treated as equal. There's practically no interaction. The atmosphere is foreboding. There is no emphasis or even opportunity to reflect. And those who are in education will know reflective learning is very, very important to promote long-term retention of what you learn. There's no feedback, there's no mentoring. Postgraduates are not trained in pedagogy except in few institutions. And to my knowledge, there is no 1:1 tutoring in any place. Should be possible because there are very few residents compared to undergraduates, but traditionally it has never happened. The current assessment methods are listed here, and I'm not going to read the list. OSCE and WAD rounds are found only in the national board system. They are not found in the MCI system till now, which have their own use and are a very important part of assessment in that particular system. Long ago, almost a couple of decades ago, this paper, landmark paper, came out from Duffield, where he has specified what are the requirements of postgraduate evaluation. Certification and predicting performance, predictive validity, we all know. But what is given in red are the important points: ensuring competence, ensuring professionalism, assessing predetermined quality, monitoring progress so that you can give additional inputs to those who lag behind, Measures for motivation and guidance and feedback. Everybody emphasizes this abroad, but somehow we have never found it possible or desirable or feasible to incorporate it in the regulatory requirements. Although 20 years have gone by, we are still based on this old system of objective-based training, which are statements of intents. Whereas the world has moved to outcome-based residency learning long ago. And the difference is summarized in this table. Outcomes are measured results of the qualities, which means you have to have a statement of outcomes, a method of providing opportunity to learn those outcomes, and an assessment which caters to finding out whether those outcomes have been learned, which is not happening in the current system. The objectives are usually uni-domain, either affective, psychomotor, cognitive, and this we have been pushing in medical education. I don't know, from the time I joined medical education in 1978. Whereas these outcomes are multi-domains, each representing components of attitude, communication, knowledge, and skills. And the most important things are that outcomes are measurable, whereas objectives are not directly measurable. This change has been made by the rest of the world long ago, and it's high time that we make this change in our own country also, to at least keep pace with the others, if not become leaders in health education. This definition of competency is known to all who focus on competency, and the definition which is most quoted is the one by Epstein. And it's given there in the first few lines. And the highlighted words are the most important. The habitual and judicious use of all the domain attitudes, cognition, and psychomotor in daily practice. So it has to be continuous, it has to be habitual and judicious. And these competencies can be listed into those which are core, common to all subjects of residency, and those which are subject specific, and those which are soft, which are often ignored both in teaching, learning, and in evaluation. So if we agree that we have to move from objective-based education to competency-based education or outcome-based education, we have to rewrite these outcomes in a form that they can be observed and measured. If you state them as objectives, they are neither observable nor measurable. And the method of doing that is to rewrite them in what we call our entrustable professional activities, which is a simple term meaning that if they're able to perform these tasks, attain these competencies, they can be entrusted to function as a specialist in that particular field. That's why that's called entrustable professional activities. Now, these are all objective statements with a built-in measurement. They cover most aspects of the subjects, and here in Sri Balaji Vidyapeeth, we have made entrustable professional activities 4 years ago, or maybe almost 5 years ago, to cover all the residency subjects. And Professor Kotur knows this, and Professor Mahalakshmi knows this. And we have these circulated to students on the day they join the course so that they know what is expected. One entrustable activity can cover several competencies, and that is the beauty of it, unlike objectives. We have also identified tools specific to these EPAs. We have built in a system where these competencies are monitored. Unless you monitor, unless you give feedback, unless you insist and permit reflection, unless you mentor, the residency education is not going to improve. And all of these can be done within the existing system without major changes in regulatory guidelines. But once you have these EPAs, you should know what is acceptable, because everybody should be on the same page and think alike. And we have a beautiful model published by an educationist called Dreyfus, a 5-level simple model, and the rubric for each model is given on the left, and the triangle representing the climb of the competency on the right. It starts with a novice. That means somebody who cannot perform, who can only observe, and proceeds to an expert who can not only perform but can also teach. Now, naturally, in 3 years of residency, we cannot make them into experts. But most competencies, we can at least strive to make them proficient. That is, they can perform independently without supervision. And some very complex competencies, at least they should be reach level 3. They can perform under loose supervision. And this constraint is only because of the duration of the course and the limited exposure they get because of the large number of postgraduates nowadays in each training program. Now, if you look at these competencies in residence and ask ourselves this question, how do you classify these competencies? This list is not comprehensive, but at least I think it mentions most of it. It can be clinical or laboratory in case of the pre and paraclinical disciplines. It can be interpretive competencies. It can be procedural competencies, otherwise called skills. It can be metacognition and higher order cognition competencies, problem solving abilities. It can be a competency because nowadays, and I read somewhere recently, that the doubling time of medicine in the year 1950, medical knowledge, was 50 years. So anybody who passed MBBS in 1950, he will enter service, retire without any change in knowledge. 30 years later, in 1980, it was reduced to 7 years. So almost as soon as you finish MBBS and you are ready to start, then a new set of knowledge has appeared, completely different from what you learned. In 2010, another 30 years down the line, it became 3.5 years. That is, within the course itself, the quantum of knowledge changes at least twice. And estimated in this year, 2020, that it will be 76 days. Now, you can say it's atrocious, but there is so much information coming in, so much practice changes, that very essential competency is the competency of information retrieval, analysis, and adoption. Then you have competency to do research, ethics, and all these soft skills, communication, reflective skills, which I never tire of saying they are the most important. Professionalism, which is totally ignored, and pedagogic skills, because the ability to engage a group and convey information or transfer skills is exceedingly important for residents, because that helps them in so many other ways, and this is never part of the formal training program of any residents. Only those who are in pedagogy like us for a whole lifetime will know how much it improves and how much it changes your perception about teamwork. There are many papers written on perception of residents. This is the best one I could find. There are many other minor things they have said. They were asked, what is lacking in your training? And they mentioned these 3 things which would never have occurred to us as teachers. You encourage development of professional competence through providing support and feedback. They are begging to have support and feedback to help to reflect and develop. Help us to cope with stress and develop emotion regulation. How to manage stress, how to manage time, how to manage with the stress of examinations, how to manage with the difficulty of working in a team, how to manage in coping with the curriculum. There is no organized system in place in any medical institution that I know of. And foster, and this came from themselves, foster teaching skills and pedagogical practices. So they are begging us to do these things, and I think it's high time that we take the message. But we are stuck with the system. So let us see what we can do within the system, because the system is not for us to change. The system is enforced. Even the new competency-based curriculum enforced by the MCI, it is so restrictive because it is almost like not even backseat driving, sitting by your side and holding the steering wheel and making sure that you go in the right direction. So much restriction. So at least within our own institutes, let us define outcomes as we have gone ahead and did and done. And Professor Kotur mentioned that in passing. It's not easy, it's difficult, it takes a couple of years, but you can do it with the faculty that you have. Establish a system of 1:1 mentoring, which again is very difficult, but we have gone ahead and done it, and it's working reasonably well now. Not perfect perhaps, but working reasonably well. A system of regular monitoring based on agreed criteria. We have agreed on the criteria, and we try our best to ensure regular monitoring and feedback. Additional academic support for those who lag behind. I must confess, this we have not succeeded to a very large extent, although this is a very important aspect of the process. Constructive feedback, 50% success for us. Facilities for support and counseling we have in some institutes, we have in our institute, but very difficult to make postgraduate residents seek such support because of peer pressure and perception that they will be noticed. So therein comes the mentor's duty. Specific targeted workshops within the current thing on teaching learning methods, on research methodology, on research ethics, publication, professionalism, time management, learning. All this is possible within this curricular time, and the regulator will not come and stop. You can also embed the use of simulation and cadaver labs. We did that for the undergraduates, and now for the last few years we are doing it for the postgraduates. We have a cadaver lab in our neighboring institute, which Professor Kotur was heading till recently. And we have a very good clinical simulation lab here, and we try to make the postgraduates go there and practice certain things which they don't get opportunities to practice in the department. And we are trying our best to integrate teaching and assessment in the workplace. This one program which has assessed what is the importance and utility of teaching, learning, training to residents, and the advantages they list there are. It involves preparation, it involves communication, therefore they prepare and come to class. And sometimes they prepare again because they don't have confidence. So at least they read it 2 or 3 times. It makes them confident if they can do the job properly, and they have more confidence in their ward rounds and other activities. It improves their attitude. It makes them work as a team and realize the difficulties of a teacher vis-a-vis the students. And there is at least to my knowledge, 4 or 5 papers which say residents with better teaching skills make better clinicians. So it directly promotes professional development. And this is very easy. All it requires is 3 to 4 days of curriculum time. But I am sorry to say that we are still focused on teacher training and not moved on to residence training. Contrary to what we think, a lot can be learned from clinical labs. And this is from this paper from in 2017. We know some of them. Investigational skills, patient management problems can be incorporated into the learning atmosphere. Clinical reasoning and appraisal, presentation skills, communication, everything else which is listed here can be done in a simulated atmosphere in the simulation lab. All that you require is a little innovation and a little curricular time. We now need to think. This term, workplace-based assessment, was introduced into education some years ago, And I think we should go beyond it, just as OSCE has moved from assessment to teaching and assessment. We have to move from WPBA to WPTBA, workplace-based teaching and assessment, where we incorporate teaching as part of the assessment, as a part of formative assessment, which does not exist at present for postgraduates. That is the only way that you will improve their competencies, because teaching has to be integrated. Just using them for assessment and for ranking them is of no particular use either to them or to the system. This some of these specific WPBA and how we can convert them into WPBTA. The factors to be considered are, the most important is, other than the other educational parameters, educational impact. What actually does it do? Does it improve their learning? And when you incorporate teaching and assessment together, you have a golden opportunity of seeing whether it improves their learning. And there should be an inbuilt system after every such exercise of feedback, which is constructive, 1:1, focused, focusing on training needs, not on criticism, providing resources and additional practice time, and serves to motivate rather than demotivate. It's possible because we have tried it, and it can be done within existing facilities. Now, there are a whole lot of WPBA methods. We'll focus on some of them which are relevant to us. Competencies, if you see, all those WPBA methods which are dealing with skills, clinical skills, soft skills, procedural skills, analytical skills, monitoring, reflective learning, documentation, every one of them is important because all of them together go to make the competency. Now let's start with clinical skills. This is given in several beautiful publications, starting with the original paper by Norcini, and I am not going to go into great detail. Those who are interested, I have put the reference at the end. And you can go through it, and it's very educative how you can expand the use of WPBA to inbuild training. Unfortunately, it is not caught on in educational circles, and it's still used as an assessment method for formative purposes. But I think we learned the lesson in OSCE and OSCE, and we should also learn that lesson in WPBA. There are a whole lot for procedural skills. I'll describe some of those. Another lot for analytical skills. Some more on soft skills, communication and professionalism, and so on and so forth. Now, this is by far one of the oldest. And the details are given elsewhere, and that takes only 15 minutes. And if you can expend it to 20 or 25 minutes if you want to incorporate teaching there. The rating scale is meant for assessment, and I don't want to mention anything about assessment. But I want to say that you can develop a rubric for every one of these 8 things on what is expected, what is deficient, what was better than expected, and how they can overcome the deficiency. And that is for us to do with reference to any one of these encounters. It may be history, may it be physical examination, professionalism, clinical judgment, counseling, organization, efficiency, keeping time in mind, or overall. So all we have to do is to sit with the areas which Mini CEX covers and see how we can incorporate a rubric to give a feedback on every one of this after every encounter. The advantages, of course, is it's done in workplace in a relaxed atmosphere, not in the examination hall. It's reproducible, and since it's being done by familiar people, anxiety is less, and papers have assessed satisfaction rates of residents, and they find that they're very happy both with the educational impact and with the satisfaction rates, and of course with the objectivity, because the idea is not to rank, the idea is not to mark, the idea in the context of what I'm saying today is to find out where they are deficient and give them a feedback to improve those specific aspects of their performance which is lacking. The Canadians and the Americans have never agreed. So if Mini CEX is American, the Canadians have the same thing under a different name called clinical encounter cards. Almost the same. And again, the list is given there, history, physical examination, so on and so forth. The blinded patient encounter largely done in Europe is for undergraduates, and I don't think it's relevant today to our discussion. This is one type of multi-source feedback which goes under the name of clinical work sampling. 4 activities of residents are rated: how they perform on a newly admitted patient, how they perform on an inpatient who's been there for some time, how they perform working in a multidisciplinary rating, and what does the patient think of their performance. And there are specific rubrics available. You can sit with the residents with these rubrics after the assessment has been done and give them a feedback on individual deficiencies and help them to correct that. I think of all the things that I've shown so far, this is one thing which can be done almost immediately. And every one of these things focuses on different things. There are 4 skills which admission focuses on: communication, physical examination, diagnosis, and management. And then 7 on which focuses on the ward work. The multidisciplinary team is about communication skills, consultations, management of resources, discharge planning, management of patients, relatives, and so on and so forth. And then the patient rating form, which focuses on communication skills and all these things. So you don't have to have a separate system of multi-source feedback. You can incorporate clinical work sampling as part of their day-to-day, once in 2 weeks, once in 3 weeks. You do it for every resident and spend half an hour with every resident, giving them an individual 1:1 feedback. And then the next time they do, you see whether those particular aspects have improved or not. DOPS is meant mostly for procedural skills. And it's an excellent method of being both a teaching method and an assessment method. And the behaviors which DOPS assesses, as listed in Narchini's paper, are all these, many things. Now, if you have a checklist like this, if you have a rubric for each aspect of the checklist, and you sit there, just like OSCE is done for undergraduates, you sit there while they're doing this, once periodically, depending on the number of faculty and the number of residents and depending on the available time. But more important than doing that is to sit with them afterwards and give specific feedback. Without feedback, anything we do will not have any improvement in either improving residents' competencies or outcomes. You can make your own list of skills and then use your checklist for them. A simple thing like nasogastric tube or catheterization can be done. We somehow have got into the idea that these are meant only for undergraduates, and we don't think that postgraduates require such focused feedback. But I personally feel that they do, because the quality of undergraduate education is not the same universally. And therefore, all postgraduates who join a course are not of uniform standard at entry, and therefore they need a little bit of additional inputs. The skill assessment, which is meant particularly altered for the sake of obstetrics, is given there. It's called OSATs, or Objective Structured Assessment of Technical Skills in obstetrics and gynecology, and all these things they do. Can't we do some of this in our own obstetrics postgraduates and use this to give them a feedback and tell them where they have gone wrong after the procedure? Personally, I feel it should be possible, provided there's motivation in the teachers. And what are the steps OSATs, this thing? Whether they check the equipment, whether they position properly, their method of doing the things, instruments, handling of instruments, wastage of time, and so on and so forth. Everything that is listed here can become a checklist, and everything can have a rubric to explain behavior, and you have to give the feedback. What I am trying to repeatedly say is postgraduate education is incomplete without feedback, mentoring, and motivation. If you don't do this, you can do everything else. Provide them library resources, provide them unlimited electronic resources. It is not going to improve because they learn as they are assessed, and the assessment is not under our control, the final assessment. So they will learn what is required for the final assessment. And in the end, you will have a postgraduate who passes the exam and finds that he is without any specific competency. I'll skip this because I've already said that. This is another type of multi-source feedback. So we get put off by the term multi-source feedback, but these things are going on forever abroad in some of the better medical schools, and now perhaps in most of the medical schools. At least look at the subheadings to know what we are not thinking about. Are we focusing on professionalism, verbal communication, written communication? Recognize the value of other members of the team. Are we focusing on appropriateness of resource utilization? In Jipmer, when I was there, we used to have workshops for postgraduates every year on rational prescription, rational management, rational use of investigations. And I think it went some distance at least in telling them that what is wrong. But unless the habitual behavior of teachers is the same as what is taught in those workshops, then the residents think that it's all play acting. If they go out back to the wards and they find that their consultants don't practice those things that they've been asked to practice in the workshop, it will not work. And that used to happen for several years. So these are the people from whom we get. The details are not important, you can read, but what I want to highlight is that it is possible to find time during the formative process if we are convinced that their skills, their competencies are substandard or less than desirable. They require to be enhanced. It is our duty to enhance them because they have come for training here, and therefore look around to find out how we can do it within curricular time without all complaining about summative examination and its deficiencies, which we just set aside for the time being as not being under our control. This is going on extensively during Zoom. It has its own problems, but in COVID times, perhaps this is the only thing which is going on, both for teaching, learning, and for assessment. But when conducted properly, it can lead to higher order thinking, problem solving abilities, ability to reason out, ability to defend one's decision, and perhaps more than that, change one's decision if you find that you have not made the correct decision, all without harm to the patient. Because we are discussing on case scenarios. We are not discussing by the bedside. We are discussing on case scenarios, very often of patients who have been discharged, or sometimes patients who are there as a part of the ongoing audit process. Because it's structured, because it's in depth, because it is a two-way and there is an opportunity to explain, because of one of the major systems of deficient in our system of training is that they don't ask questions. However much you try to encourage, I don't know why, but they just don't ask questions. But in this scenario, perhaps they will be more forthcoming in trying to raise doubts and clarify some of those doubts. And if they do that, higher order thinking is encouraged. And you can also evaluate the method of written communication and record keeping. All these have been validated, and it validates with several other accepted methods of evaluation. What I am pleading again and again is, do not keep these as methods of assessment. Convert them into methods of teaching. Assessment is the least of our worries. Our worry is teaching, learning to produce the desired competency. Actual competency-based training is different because the outcomes are fixed, the duration is variable. So if somebody doesn't reach the outcome, you can extend his course, and this freedom is available in some of the countries. But in our country, the duration is fixed and the outcome also is fixed. And therefore, within that duration, you have to attain the outcome, and therefore we have to go that extra mile and see how we can make everybody reach at least acceptable standards as per the Dreyfus criteria. One thing we made a conscious decision to implement and went ahead and did it in spite of so many queries and doubts and worries and every possible inhibitory influence, that we will at least start multi-source feedback. Because if you see the ambience in which a postgraduate resident works, he has to interact with so many of these in the blocks around him. But what seems to count for determining whether he is competent or not is the only one point of contact with the examiners, and there lies the failure of the system. So if you ignore all others, you are not getting a 360-degree view of the resident's competency and an opportunity to correct those. It has obvious advantages. Provided confidentiality is maintained and anonymity maintained, you get the best information on professionalism, the best information on communication skills with patients, relatives, other healthcare workers, and with their other faculty. Mahalakshmi will remember that when we went to Harvard to see how they teach undergraduates, they played a video to us of a resident's performance in the ward, where when a consultant comes for rounds, the young lady will present the case and rattle off what the patient came with, what questions she asked, what are the physical findings, what investigations she did, what was her management plan, what she carried out, what are the results of the investigation, and how the patient is doing. Looking at that, you will think that that is an exceedingly professional resident who's near perfect as can be. And then they play the next video, and the next video is a patient's relative comes and asks her after the ward rounds are over some doubts, and she almost bites the person's head off and says, "Don't you think I have other things to do? How many times will I answer you again and again and again?" And then another resident comes in the third video and asks her, "You see, I have got some important work in the house. I have duty this Sunday. Can you exchange with me?" And she says, "Get lost." Just 2 words. I hope Maha can recollect. This video has left a lasting image on me about the need for multi-source feedback before you give any value judgment on a performance. The story is self-explanatory, and I don't have to really mention the importance of multi-source feedback. But we have lots of issues because in the hierarchy which exists in India, the doctors consider themselves at the top of the pyramid. almost equal to God. And today only I read an internet joke. What's the difference between a consultant and God? And the answer was, God does not think that he is a consultant. So that is the attitude of doctors. And therefore, the others are afraid to give feedback. And also, it's not acceptable to get a feedback from nurses or other healthcare workers as per our culture. So to break that cultural barrier, it requires a lot of training, lot of effort, lot of one-to-one interaction. They are also afraid of lack of confidentiality, and what they write will be told to the residents, and therefore fear of retaliation. Or they may collude and say everybody is good. Or they'll feel that there is no post-assessment consequences. What if they give? Nothing seems to happen. All these are very valid problems, and the only solution is to give intensive training to these people, make the questionnaire for them very, very simple. The only three things they have to answer, 3 grades, not 10-point scale. Do you think this work of the resident in this particular field is satisfactory? What you expect of a doctor? Less than satisfactory or more than satisfactory? On a 3-point scale, it is easier to grade. And the thing is, how does he talk to patients? How does he talk to relatives? Is he available when relatives want to ask doubts? Things like that. And with that, we are able to get some sort of response for our multi-source feedback endeavors. This WPBA has lots of advantages. Because it's read by trainee, they select when they want to have it, what they want to have. They are more motivated. And it tests the highest level of Biller's pyramid at the level of actual being able to do rather than just showing how to do. It takes place in the context of a working environment and therefore makes it more natural. And since it's done several times, they know one bad encounter does not matter, and they continue to do well, not unlike a final exam, which is used to be a one-day match, and then it became only a clinical match, and now it becomes a one-case match. If you do one case badly, you're finished, whatever else you do in the rest of the exams. Please tell yourself, WPBA, they may be called WPBA, but it's actually WPBTA, and you can use it as well or better for training as for assessment. It's objective because it's multi-sourced. There's a high degree of feasibility. Provided you build in feedback, it gives good feedback. And it gives you an opportunity for longitudinal assessment and identification of those who are lagging for additional support. And it encourages reflection because you are giving a feedback and you're asking their response. And they go back and write what they feel. And that is where this comes in. We have devised a method of recording this continuously on a day-to-day basis on an indigenously developed e-portfolio here. And it has all these components. The various learning modules, the critical incidents, the documents substantiating all those, the assessments, and the reflective part. We pay a lot of attention and emphasis on reflection. And when they write a reflection, why they learned or why they did not learn, which is what is more interesting to us, we go ahead and then see that they get that opportunity to relearn that. But both faculty and students have a lot of responsibilities towards this. Faculty has to put in an extra half an hour because they have only 1 or 2 students at a time. Identify and define competencies, which has already been defined. The outcome list is there. The EPA list is there for all departments. The acceptable evidence is there. The acceptable level of accomplishment is there. The timetables are built into the system. The method of giving feedback is built in. The students have to do their role and collect evidence and document and do it on a regular basis. If they do it like the logbook in the previous system where it's written by a junior student on the day before the final exam, then it will not work. We had lots of problems because we used to have monthly monitoring under the Vice Chancellor, Professor Seduraman at that time, to see how these portfolios are working. There are portfolios where there are no reflections, or where all the reflections have been done on the day before because they know next day they are due for assessment. So we stop telling them when they are due and then we call them suddenly. And then we find reflection, but the faculty has not given feedback. And then incomplete entries. And there are so many other, but these are all minor difficulties, software, indigenization and all that. Most of it has been solved. In my last few slides are what are the problems we actually had in our university. We had a lot of problem in agreeing on need for change. Why not? This is work for us. Why should we change? This is more work. It's more faculty intensive, certainly, and those in the DNB system where faculty is limited will find it difficult. And I've been trying to push outcome-based learning for the surgical gastroenterology program, and it's being consistently blocked by the DNB faculty who are training students. All the MCA students, faculty are convinced, but the DNB faculty are not convinced. There are time constraints, caseload, standardized patients. Maha is an expert in standardized patients, and she'll tell you sky is the limit when you use standardized patients. And don't think it can be used only for undergraduates. It can be used for postgraduates also for procedures like obtaining informed consent, giving bad news, and so on and so forth. Telling the problems with investigation, giving alternates in management, getting consent for participation in research and all that. There is a need for constant monitoring, and that has to be inbuilt into the system. The limitations are, of course, as of now, we can do nothing about the final exam. We can use it only for formative purposes. And initially, the weaker trainees whose undergraduate career has not been very, very strong may be a little discouraged. But when you do it separately, they get over their constraints. And to some extent still remain subjective depending on who's doing the observation, who's giving the feedback. The challenges are more imaginary than real. Demonstrating feasibility, we have done it by demonstrating, and now that reluctance is gone. And we can always go on saying the MCI will stop us or the university will stop us. Nobody has stopped us for the last 7 years. And I don't think they're bothered about stopping something which is not changing their system. Then the actual process of competency building into postgraduate training is there are difficulties with EPAs. All faculty may not agree on a common EPA, how many to write. And sometimes the EPAs are trivial and you have to rewrite. But fortunately for this, pre-formed EPAs are available in plenty in the net from various countries. And all you have to do is to look at them and tailor them to your own needs. You don't have to start de novo. Then there are difficulties with assessment, when to start, what frequency, do I have to do it every 3 months or 6 months? And is it possible to attain level 3 or we should aim for 4 and so on and so forth. All sorts of express difficulties will be there. There's only one solution, repeated workshops to motivate the faculty. You have to convince them that the change is required, as I'm hoping to convince all of you at the end of this talk. You make them willing partners in progress, bring out the advantages of the new system, emphasize on quality of output, which is our main aim, emphasize two candidates on benefits to them, reduce undue workload. It should not take 3 hours every day. And then build in a system of recognition and reward so that they feel that their efforts are being recognized. These are the references which I want all of you to read. Narchini's paper is there and the other two. And of course from our own Dr. Tejinder Singh, an excellent paper on workplace-based assessment, but stop thinking of it as workplace-based assessment and start thinking of it as workplace-based teaching and assessment, and try to do as an integrated process. Thank you all very much for a patient hearing, and I hope this is not the reaction of the audience at the end of my talk, but I'll wait to hear from all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for that excellent talk. It's very nice listening to you always, because you make things very simple and very clear. The linearity, the flow was very nice. You started with objectives, moved on to outcomes, and then you said that what is the importance of using skills versus competencies. You moved that along, and then you converted workplace-based assessment into workplace-based teaching and assessment. So that way that I think the message has reached very well. And more important, in the entire discussion, you spoke all about the importance of feedback and mentoring the students. I think that was exceptionally well done. Sir, I have quite a few questions from the audience, both here as well as in the thing. So can I take it up now, sir? Sir, can I? Your mic is muted. Yeah. Sir, first and foremost question is that a lot was spoken about feedback and mentoring, sir, for enhancing resident learning. Dr. Nandita Zara from Neurovirology, Dr. Ambedkar Nagar, I don't know where, some MIL hospital. She wants to know what is the methods or modalities of feedbacks to enhance resident learning.
See, the only thing you have to tell yourself is feedback has to be constructive. Start with focusing on what they did well, and then go on to what they could have done better instead of saying what they did badly. If that is the attitude you adopt, I think the feedback will go well. But if you start by focusing on what they did not do well and point out their mistakes, it will not go well at all. They'll not be willing listeners to their feedback. There are many accepted methods of feedback, sandwich, this, that, and all sorts of pedagogic terms are there. But the basic principles are, it has to be 1:1, it has to be confidential, it has to start with what they did well and give them the recognition for what they did well, and then go on to what they could have done better, at the same time conveying that you understand that perhaps the circumstances were out of their control, why they didn't do better, and give them hints on how to do better next time. I think that summarizes the essential purpose of feedback.
Thank you, sir. There is a long list of questions from Dr. Yokesh. He is an assistant professor in Goa Medical College, Vasco da Gama. So the first question he says is that, do you think that 2 or 3 days exam is 20 years of PG learning? That's the thing he starts with.
Yeah, I think it's a rhetorical question where the answer is inbuilt into the question. It's not enough. It's but what we have. It's not even a 3-day. 3-day maybe in microbiology. But in surgery, it's not even 3 hours. So, but that's what we have. There are 2 ways of looking at things. Look at what we have and go on telling endlessly, as we have done from the time that we came into medical education, that MCI is a block and they don't have any recommendation. What can I do? The other is to see what we can do within the system where we will not rub the regulator on the wrong side. And if you have a good inbuilt continuous formative system, then doesn't matter whether the exam is 3 days or 6 days or 1 month or even just an MCQ like it is in most of the other countries. Does not matter.
The next question is, sir, you might remember that the session, there was one debate which was held in the Meducon, where Dr. Geetanjali also participated. She was
Yes, yes.
talking about the need to remove internal examiners from examination.
No,
She has
external.
also mirrored external examination.
External.
No, but Dr. Yogesh has got the other opinion. He says, should he not go ahead and remove the internal examiners only from PG exams? And like what is being done in DependB and all? Can we have only impartial examiners? So that's
It
the
is.
next.
I think the important thing is not whether the examiner is internal or external, whether there is a proper procedure for conducting the exam, laid down guidelines of what you expect, and accepted questions to be asked. It cannot be questions shot out of your mouth from in something that you have read the previous night. Now that is going to put off anybody. And I have seen external examiners who are very kind, and I have seen internal examiners who are very unkind. So I don't classify examiners into good or bad based on whether they are internal or external. So if you have a system which is good, then everybody has to work. In national board, it works because we have a fear that an internal examiner will favor his own. But actually, in many exams where I have gone, Maha, strangely enough, I find for some reason which I don't fathom, the external examiner wants to pass somebody whom we don't want to. And I just don't want to mention my thoughts on that. But it happened and surprised me sometimes.
It's always the mother-in-law who is tougher, no, sir. Outsiders are nicer food.
I know. Do you
Yeah.
remember
Then,
that? Do you remember that girl's video we saw?
yes, sir, I do remember, sir. Very nice. Dr. Sufanel was sharing that information.
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Sir, you spoke very nicely about this OSATs in the Royal College of Obstetrics, where
Yeah.
you need to observe technical skills of the students. So there is one question in the box which is asking about, should demonstration of surgical skills be made compulsory for surgical specialties? Earlier it was there in MCH courses and all, sir, but now again, now it is not there for the last
No.
years. Should we bring it back?
Unequivocally, I'll say no, because the patient is not the person to experiment on in an examination environment. So, whatever be the nature of surgery, whether it is so-called less invasive, minimal, or major, that is not an environment in which you should test. Because, firstly, to get informed consent from a patient, for a resident to operate under the examination situation, I think is not at all possible. You can do it only under subterfuge. And I can tell you an incident when I was doing my rotation in thoracic surgery at All India Institute. We used to be the fourth assistant for thoracotomies, and the examination case for MCH used to be to do a mitral commissurotomy. And every examination candidate was expected to perform a mitral commissurotomy, and our job is to just stand there. We can't even see what is happening, but we have to be there. And you know, when you make the hole in the ventricle, you put a purse string around that, and you put the Tubbs dilator through that, and then you hold that purse string in an instrument called the Tubbs, which holds it tight. You can tighten or loosen. Now, this fellow, while doing that, suddenly, as he was doing, one of the examiners asked, "Did you see this in the X-ray?" And he turned to look, and the purse string got pulled out of the left ventricle, leaving a hole which is 5 millimeters wide. And you can imagine the chaos there in the operating room for the next half an hour. Of course, people came in, closed it, and all that, and later on, patient was all right. But it's not fair on the patient. And I am very strong about it. And likewise, doing operative surgery on cadavers is not good, because if you remember, I don't know whether you had, in our MBBS days, final year surgery had an operative surgery session where they'll give you a dried cadaver which is probably 5 years old, lying prone, and you have to expose the kidney from the back, which is not an operation ever done by urologists. So, such things don't make sense. But that was part of the examination. I don't think there should be live demonstration at the MCH level. It can be certified in formative assessment because they're doing it in a less stressful environment.
Thank you, sir. That was very nice story. Dr. Anupama, sir, from MP Shah Government Medical College, Jamnagar. She wants to know how to assess the resident skills during this ongoing COVID pandemic.
It's not an ideal situation, and it should never happen that you certify a residence based on distance assessment methods. Okay, so it should never happen. And I can never say that because of COVID, they don't have to have a proper examination. It can happen as a part of the teaching learning program. But the great problem with case scenario based learning is they don't have to ask questions. Everything is provided to them as answers. So where is the skill of history taking? Where is the skill of physical examination? Somebody has given them a printed page and given them the investigations they have to discuss. So at least in the surgical specialties, I am not aware of any method where summative examination can be done during COVID times without a proper encounter with a patient.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Koto, do you have any comments to make?
In fact, we had the summative PG examination during COVID times based on the way you described, no sir, without any encounter. Somebody gave one page of a case-based case scenario, and
very sad.
Very sad. We don't have any answer. You feel guilty for being a party for such things. And one more thing, sir, about your this external examiner, internal examiner issue.
By the way, I won that debate 90% to 10%. I said external examiners have to be there.
Many times what happens, the external examiner's encounter with the candidate will be only for a couple of minutes or 1 hour or something from which he will not be able to either know or doesn't know also anything. Assessment will not be proper unless the internal examiner gives a proper input or information about him. We always say portfolio can bail you out in case of problem, those kind of things. And now what I have seen, the quality of the students getting enrolled for the PG programs is such that internal examiners or the teachers are many a times we feel helpless. And they come to the final year examinations, and there, if because of various reasons here in the local institution, the internal examiner may not be able to do what he wants. Under such circumstances, through the external examiners, you may have to do because you are answerable, you are a party for anything, whether a pass or a fail. So it is very unjust way of we can't.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Kotur, for those words. Dr. Bhatt, do you have anything to say, or can I close this meeting?
I think, as usual, AK has done a good job, and his resident used to say why he's called AK, because if you do not behave properly or do not properly, they get firing like from the AK rifle. So,
AK-47.
yes. Only one clarification I wanted is this workplace assessment is definitely good, but with the increasing number of students, so we have to find some method to do this workplace-based assessment, because maybe number of teachers assess may be difficult. So what is your suggestion? Because now number of postgraduates, undergraduates, everything is increased. How to see everybody's workplace based assessment, or we will make the senior person to observe the junior person or something like that. My question is heard?
Your voice is breaking,
Yes, sir.
Dr. Bhatt.
No. With the increasing number of students, okay, if it is not clear, let me thank you and stop.
No, sir was asking about with increasing number of students, how we can actually make this teaching learning programs effective. Is the near peer teaching near peer assessment work for PGs as it works in UGs? I think that is what I got from his things. I'm not sure if sir's internet is a problem. Sir, can you hear, sir? Okay, sir.
Yeah, I heard you. I didn't hear Vishnu. See, near peer teaching will work if the near peers are sufficiently trained. When the near peer and the peer are the same, then it will not work, because they have to have some background competency in order to be able to transfer some of it to their colleagues and juniors. But that's the situation in India. I just recently read a paper by Dr. Vinod Paul, former member of the Planning Commission and former chairman of the Board of Governors, about the policy which focuses only on increasing the number of seats. There is no mention anywhere in that policy about improving quality. How to improve undergraduate seats, how to get the ratio to 1:1,000, how to increase postgraduate seats. Like the new regulation says, all the new postgraduates have to go to district hospitals. Now, if you don't have a proper system in district hospitals of training or mentoring or feedback, or at least conforming to what is required, it's going to be a big holiday for these people who go there and then while away 3 months or whatever period they're required to spend. But that is unfortunately the situation. So I made a decision, conscious decision. Ignore the regulator as if they don't exist and see what you can do best in your own environment.
Thank you very much, sir. On that note, it is we'll thank Dr. Ananthakrishnan for an excellent webinar as usual. Sir, no, he ages better with increasing years. I have heard this talk on EPA, I think almost 10 times till now, and every time I pick up some new points which he shares with us. Thank you very much, sir, for your expertise and also willing to share with us and taking all the questions from participants.
Sir,
Thank you, Maha.
Sir, did you tell her not to ask my questions?
Dr. Philip, you can ask all the questions.
No,
There
because
is
you haven't.
no issue with that.
Ek sir must have told you beforehand. Not
No.
my questions.
No.
Not guilty.
Okay.
Not guilty, Joseph.
I'll send Dr. Philip's questions to you in the chat messages
Now
saved.
I will talk to
You
him
can look at
directly.
it and answer in person.
No, I will talk to him directly. No problem.
Yeah. Before we close, I have an announcement for all the people. This whole program has been recorded. It will be put in our YouTube and we'll share the link with you. Please download the e-certificates for the program by going into our link and putting the email ID through which you have joined. Thank you very much. Next Friday, we'll meet you again. There is another interesting talk. We have none other than Dr. Avinash Supe, who is the founder director of GMC Fimer Institute in Bombay, who will be talking to us about how to do clinical skills teaching during the COVID pandemic. So that is the talk for next Friday. That is the 27th of November. We'll meet you again at 2:45 p.m. on Friday. Thank you very much, folks. Stay safe during the COVID pandemic. It was very nice interacting with you all, and bye-bye. This is Dr. Mahalakshmi on behalf of the Scientific Society of AVMC signing off. Thank you. Thank you all.